And Rikki Lambert, who's from our Flow News 24 desk, is with me in our studio. Hi, Rikki. How are you?
Great, thank you, Wayne.
I've been travelling through Mildura yesterday, and there's certainly a lot of interest in water and how the Murray-Darling Basin plan is unfolding. There is a lot of commentary about New South Wales and Victoria and their differing positions, but I've been interested this week. There's also some differing positions from the federal government and from the South Australian government, but not just the South Australian government. There is actually from a wide group of political persuasions in South Australia interest in the South Australian position on the River Murray and the Murray-Darling Basin plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is still what we're seeing through history since the plan started in 2012 and the fractious debate. You have that whole upstream, downstream debate, and it's still going on today, and it will keep going on forever, really. But what we have is a basin plan that has some locked-in legislated targets and some consequences if those targets aren't met. And that's where you have the federal government and South Australia saying to Victoria and New South Wales, get on with your projects to get to the targets by 2024. Victoria and New South Wales are saying, no, we need more time.
In more time, and we discussed that earlier in the week about some of the infrastructure projects and the fact that the federal government is trying to appease the New South Wales farmers at the moment by saying we're not going to do any more buybacks. There is a position, if you're in New South Wales, where you'd say, well, actually, we've had too many buybacks already. So is that position warranted? And then when you talk then about some of these other infrastructure, the flooding situation of the levee-type banks where you've got those that are closer to the river, losing some of their property while the water is flooding through it. These become complex questions. And can New South Wales and Victoria get to some of these targets, or are the targets simply impossible to meet?
Well, you've got to look at the big number of 3,200 gigalitres that they want to recover. They've got to just over 2,000 that they have recovered. And in my conversation with SA Murray Irrigators early this morning that we'll bring you next week on Flow FM, a lot of that was achieved through buyback. So they've stopped the easy approach of the buyback approach, and they've gone to the harder approach of efficiency measures like those channels being sealed, etc. But that last 1,100 or so is proving very difficult to achieve.
Now, we did also have some articles through the week that came through about the dams and about the building of larger dams, and particularly with all the water that's coming out of New South Wales right now. And you and I discussed even about tunnelling, using the tunnel system that they've got, these big clawers that they're currently using in Melbourne to go under the Yarra River. Maybe they should be going into some of the regional areas and rediverting rivers back into the western side of the Great Divide.
Yeah, I like to say these are boring conversations because they want these boring machines to do the kind of thing China has been doing and redirect floodwater so they don't go out into the Pacific Ocean, but they actually come down the mountain and then through the tunnel back into the basin. And if we're fair dinkum about growing food production in Australia, particularly the food bowl of the nation, which is the Murray-Darling Basin, we really should be looking at that, because adding water has to be on the table, but you run into the usual blockages with the Greens and environmentalists who just don't want any more dams, full stop.
Yes, and that's the question, I think, holding more water and then being able to have more efficiency when it does come down through the system with those closed channels with pipes and so on that have been done through the Grampians, Wimmera and Mallee water in northwestern Victoria. It seems a no-brainer to see infrastructure funding towards that. Let's see whether or not the coalition can get back to some policy, and maybe some of the people from the other side can actually allow the discussion on important policy so that we can actually see some changes in the Murray-Darling Basin plan. Rikki, I'm going to get you back a bit later and I'm going to ask you about a completely different topic, but it's been good to get your thoughts on this really interesting discussion on water this week.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne.